Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below, let me know what your pick of the week was for a chance to be featured on the episode. Now let's get started. I had about 10 comics this week, so a pretty average-sized haul, and number 10 for me was a book that I got on whim, but was originally looking forward to, but then I read the Free Comic Book Day book and didn't love it, and I was like, oh, should I get issue 1? I didn't love the Free Comic Book Day stuff, but it was an average size haul, like I said, so I was like, all right, I have a little bit of room for this issue 1, which is Ranger Academy issue 1. I was really looking forward to this, as I mentioned. I am a big Power Rangers fan, I like YA stuff, I enjoy Academy books every once in a while, but this one doesn't really feel like your average high school, let's call story or academy book, or your average Power Rangers book, and because of that, I didn't really know what they were going for. It definitely feels a little bit more sci-fi than I originally thought it was going to be, and I just feel like I couldn't get into the characters either in the Free Comic Book Day book or this one, and that's something that really took me to surprise. Also, it's not really related to previous characters of Power Rangers in any way, or even the mythos. There's maybe some things like, floating heads, and honestly, it takes until the end of the issue even to get to the Academy. So I was a bit disappointed with this one. That's number 10 for me, and I gave that 2 stars. Moving on to number 9, a book I'm surprised I've been disappointed by, and then Shazam issue 4. I like Shazam. I enjoyed the first issue. I love Dan More's artwork, and I like Mark Waid's writing, but I feel like ever since he's been taking over a lot of these titles at DC, none of them have been reaching the heights of that original World's Finest book, because maybe we're spreading Mark Waid a little bit too thin here. And a lot of it has this Silver Age essence to it, which I really loved about World's Finest, but there was a lot of progression in World's Finest as well, where we get to see more about the new characters and how that relates to a bigger story, and these, especially Shazam and Teen Titans, have not felt that way. I feel like it's kind of going through the motions. It has such a Silver Age bend that it's like, okay, here's a romance story, let's get there. I like when it touches on the family. I feel like that's the most progression that we get with the story, because it's like, okay, what happened in their powers? Are they going to get their powers back? But it really leans a little bit too much into the romance story here, and just couldn't get into it. And since that break with Night Terrors, I feel like this book has lost a lot of momentum. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 9. All right, moving on to number 8, which is Sacrificers, issue 3. This is Rick Remender's Image comic book, and I really liked the first issue. I enjoyed the second issue as well. This one kind of strays away a little bit. That first part of the issue is more about the mythology of this world, and then we get back to our main characters, and are they actually being sacrificed or not? We're learning more about that, and then we're also just getting to see a little bit more about the world, like I mentioned, through the eyes of our characters. Like, okay, are they going to die? Or are they not? And I like those little moments, but I do feel like this slowed things down a little bit and maybe focused on too many things. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 8. All right, moving on to number 7, a book that one of the big books of the year, honestly, I guess, and also today, which is G.O.D.S issue 1. You thought I was going to say Transformers. Don't worry, that is a bit higher up. G.O.D.S is a book that I think if you are a Hickman fan, if you're a fan of Krakoa, you're going to love this book. I think it does everything that Hickman promises to do in most of his books. As someone who doesn't love Hickman's style of writing and more of the world building and very, very deeply going into mythology, it wasn't for me, but I have an appreciation of this book, which is why it's higher. The artwork is really good for it. It does have that, again, X-Men first gen of Krakoa feel, but then also introduces new characters, which I think Marvel is definitely needing of. A new type of story that's connected to Marvel, but not so connected that you feel like, oh, well, I gotta be reading Fantastic Four and X-Men to understand this. It's just like, yeah, this is in the Marvel Universe, but it's doing its own thing, which I could really appreciate. Is it for me? No, but I think this is a good book, and I think if you already enjoyed all the predecessors of Hickman, go check this out. I really just think it depends on what type of fan you are. So overall, giving that 3 stars. I probably won't get the next issue, but glad I got the first issue. All right, moving on To number 6, I was surprised to see this lower, and that is Birds of Prey issue 2. This does have a little bit of an issue 2 slump here, where it is a point A to point B issue. The team is now together, and now we got to see how do they get to Themyscira to try to save Sin. And it is a lot of talking in this issue, not as much action, not as much character development. It really, again, is to get to point A to point B. I like the art style a lot for this. I like that it feels very old school 2000s, but there's times in the print where it feels a little bit blurry because of it, because of the style. But I like this book. I want to see where it goes. But again, I think it really was just more point A to point B, where the first issue had a little bit of a shocking cliffhanger, a little bit more of an initiative. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is X-Men issue 27. X-Men is a book that I just jumped onto again with Kitty Pryde returning as Shadowcat. And the best parts obviously is Kitty. I love Kitty, and I like how Jerry Dugan writes Kitty. And then we get to the Fantastic Four and some of the other characters that have not been following as much, and plus Miss Marvel as an X-Men. And that part didn't do much for me. It kind of similar to the Birds of Prey stuff, where this is a little bit more of a point A to point B. There is a little bit more movement in this issue, but there's not much going on. It's a pretty skippable issue in my opinion, but if you enjoy these characters, you might have 1 or 2 character moments you like here, but plot wise it doesn't really move much. So overall, giving that one 3 stars, and that is number 5. So moving on to number 4, a book that I thought improved a slight bit, and that is Batman issue 138. If you're a fan of the Bat family or Robins in general, you'll like this one. It's the Robins fighting each other. There's a big moment that I don't know if everyone's gonna like, that Batman is becoming so controlling, and the mythos of I forget the character's name, Zar, the other Batman, is really infecting Batman's mind, and he is trying to change Jason to be a better person and force him to kind of be not himself, which is very interesting to see. And the Robins kind of having this moral query about it. And then in the background you have Vandal Savage and his daughter. We'll see where that goes. But I like the artwork of this one. I enjoyed the battle. It didn't blow my mind. I still don't think this arc is blowing my mind. I don't know how to feel about where Batman's going, but I thought a little bit more happened here. There's some good character beats, some good actions. Overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, the big book of the year, the actual really big book of the year, and that is Transformers issue 1. I don't know anything about Transformers, if I'm being completely honest. I know the bare minimum. I saw the Michael Bay first 2 movies a very long time ago on television, but other than that, I've never really watched Transformers. I don't know much about the franchise, but I really like Daniel Warren Johnson as a creator. Do a Powerbomb was one of my favorite comics, if not my favorite comic last year. And I just think he's a really great storyteller when it comes to art and character stories. So I was like, if anyone's going to make me a Transformers fan, it's going to be Daniel Warren Johnson. And honestly, I think he does a pretty solid job with this issue, where we get to open up with characters that you don't need to know anything about Transformers to get into. It's about this boy who seems like to me he lost his brother. He doesn't have a good relationship with his father, and he wants to go to space. And him and his maybe romantic interest, maybe friend, are just trying to get to that next step of life, go to college and try to live out their dreams. And then they meet with the Transformers. And by the end of the issue, Transformers fight throughout most of the issue. And then one of the evil Transformers, they affect the father's life even more with one of his colleagues dying in front of him. And it seems like he's already gone through a lot of trauma, so it's kind of adding on to it. Really love the character story. I'm already invested in these characters, and I think they're going to be a really great POV for people that don't know anything about Transformers and kind of getting into this new era. I think Transformers fans will give this a 5 stars. The reason I give it 4 is the big chunk in the middle. I didn't quite understand what's going on. I don't know who Megatron. I mean, I guess I kind of know who he is, but I don't really know who Megatron is. There's so many names where I'm like, I'm familiar with them, but I think Shockwave's one of them. I'm like, I kind of know who you are, but I don't. Bumblebee, I kind of know who you are, but I also don't. And there's just a lot of names that are shouted where I was like, okay, hopefully this is explained at some point as someone who's never seen Transformers, and I think needs to be with something with a series like this. And again, I think a good thing is that there is promise to do that. Like, there are these characters who also don't know what's going on, that they're going to have to explain the whole situation, who these characters are. And I think it did a good job for people who already are invested in these characters. You get into the middle of the fight, you don't need to have all this exposition. It's kind of the example of when you go into a Spider-Man movie, you kind of already know that Uncle Ben has died. Do you want to see it again? I don't know. So what's the balancing act there? And the artwork was so good. Daniel Warren Johnson's just such a diverse artist, where he could be drawing wrestling and wrestling moves to doing these like big mecha fights, and they both feel similar and gritty, but also feels different and not repetitive. So I enjoyed the art. Definitely sold me to get the next issue, and I think it is worth the hype, because I think it's worth the hype because it's not just for one particular fan. I really think there's a potential that this could be for everybody. So I'm giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. All right, moving on to number 2, a book I was pleasantly surprised to see so high, and that's Ghostlore, issue 5. I really enjoy the characters of this book. I like the father-daughter relationship, and a lot of the past issues have had to do with the stories of the ghosts. Here we get to see more of our main characters learning more about their powers, I guess you'd call it, and the daughter meaning more people like her and what they're doing with their, again, quote unquote powers, and seeing that there's a community here, which I'm curious to see where that goes. Can you trust them? Can you not? And what does that mean for the relationship between the father and the daughter? And the artwork is spectacular. And I honestly think, even though this is more of a talking heads issue, I enjoyed the artwork the most here, because you're getting so many great character beats. So overall, giving that 4 stars, really enjoying to see where this goes, and it gets me excited to see what the next issue is going to bring, because it's so much more character driven, but still has the ghost stories if you enjoy that aspect. Moving on to my number 1 pick, which is Peacemaker Tries Hard, issue 6. This is the last issue of Peacemaker. And the reason this is so high is that I just feel like it sticks the landing. It really has that build up throughout the whole issue of Peacemaker being a loser, not really knowing what side of the law he stands on, and not really having friends. And by the end of the issue, it's about him having a true friend, and that friend sacrificing himself, but then also seeing maybe some of his colleagues start to believe in him as well, and you just get to see him be happy, which is kind of cool, and it's just a great culmination of the story, and I feel like it balances comedy really well, it balances that emotion well. There's splendid art. The artwork is so good from an action standpoint, and especially an emotional standpoint. I just feel like, again, it sticks to landing. It's a great miniseries. Go check it out. It's a character that, I mean, unless you watch the television show, is not really presented at DC Comics very often. I like seeing that. I like seeing, a story that's not just Batman or Superman. Let's see different types of characters at DC, and giving great opportunities to artists and writers to kind of do whatever you want in this, because you kind of tell there's some freedom there. So giving that 4 stars. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below, what was your favorite comics of the week? And last week's viewer pick of the week was Dr. Aphra, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one.